Last week, for the first time, a detransitioner won a malpractice lawsuit against their therapist and the surgeon. Let's get into it.
With all this trans butchery nightmare, my profession, particularly the social work end of it, but my real psychologists, let's say, were also stunningly craven in their unwillingness to resist this. The mantra was to parents, well, would you rather have a live trans child or a dead child? Which there was never, Charlie, there was never a shred of evidence for that.
It's one of the most evil things that has happened.
It is unbelievable. The people who promoted that should be imprisoned.
Before we go further, my name is Casey and I have been a therapist for more than 13 years, and I have told nearly every place I worked for in that time that if they proceed with this type of nonsense, they will get sued, and it looks like this is the first suit to come through. If you would like to build with me a future of faith, fatherhood, and freedom in America so that my 4 kids can live in a better tomorrow, please like on the way in. I'd love to earn your subscription. Now let's get into what was said about this lawsuit.
Identity, and my job is to rubber stamp it. It's like, I'm not a therapist then. So this is not only insane, this insistence. Like, I like to think of truth, untruth, and anti-truth, right? And the notion that therapists affirm is an anti-truth. Because, look, let's say you come to me and you say, you have a proposition about yourself, and I say, no, I'm your therapist. No, that's wrong. It's like, that's not good therapy. But neither is you have a proposition about yourself and you're disturbed enough to come to a therapeutic session, and I say, yes, you're right. It's like, I don't know if you're right. And if you're so right, why are you here?
Reading from the Unheard article a little here, it says, last week for the first time, a detransitioner won a malpractice lawsuit against both her therapist and surgeon, awarded a $2 million jury verdict, which according to the New York Post also includes $400,000 for future medical expenses. The young person, going by Fox, identified as a boy when her psychologist, Dr. Kenneth Einhorn, approved a double mastectomy and her surgeon, Dr. Chin, performed it when she was 16 years old. She later went back on that decision and detransitioned and returned to identifying as a girl and concluded that the medical interventions had harmed her. Now, as a therapist, I don't see the types of patients who would want to do this, but I understand that this is not, the jury verdict is not saying that they believe that transitioning was actually fundamentally wrong. It was the way that the client in this case was pushed into it. So they determined that the psychologist and the surgeon pressed her to move forward with the double mastectomy when it was perhaps too early or against her will or not procedurally accurate. Reading again from the article, the complication is that there is really no established standard of care. We've revealed this in the WPATH files several months ago, but the WPATH stands for the World Professional Association for Transgender Health, and it's an advocacy group, not a rigorous scientific group. It says that it's made up of both activists and healthcare professionals, and it created documents called the Standards of Care, but that doesn't mean that those are established protocols because this activist organization essentially made them up. That would be like me saying that, well, there's a World Organization for Conservative Medicine, and if somebody comes into my office and they're suffering as a liberal, then these are the standards of care and procedures for turning them away from that. That seems so obviously unethical, right? And that is exactly what they did, just in sort of the reverse and attuning themselves to this type of medicine. Here is exactly where they determined that the procedural ways that these psychologists move forward were inappropriate. It says that most official documents, and again, if they're WPATH documents, that's not necessarily a rigorous scientific document, but most official documents suggest that waiting periods after diagnosis of gender dysphoria and evaluation of a patient's mental health should be extended, which Varian's doctors did not do. Varian reportedly suffered from a slew of mental health conditions, so it runs co-occurring with other mental health disorders, comorbidity, and therefore we should investigate those other things, because if you're depressed and you're able to remove some of the symptoms of depression that you're suffering from, perhaps some of these other nuances of how you think you should move into transitioning would be removed. That doesn't necessarily mean that would happen, but perhaps if you can investigate, like if somebody comes to me and they're addicted to substances and they're having psychotic breaks because of that, I need to investigate what would happen if the substances were removed. Is it possible that they would no longer have psychosis, which is very realistic. Varian reportedly suffered from anorexia, body dysmorphia, and autism, which could lead some to believe that the transition could be misinterpreted as gender dysphoria. So gender dysphoria is what was previously used when we were talking about cases of people who came in as being one gender or sex and desired to try to transition to another. Now that has been amended because psychology is broken and they just go with whatever's politically expedient instead of doing what is actually scientifically and rigorously measured. I believe that the WPATH files have brought that to light. By now, this is a well-known issue in youth gender medicine industry, said Dr. Hilary Cass, described as diagnostic overshadowing. Clinicians seem to be skipping this step of differential diagnosis, trying to ascertain the root cause of a patient's issues. That is, gender comes into the conversation, professionals ignore all other possibilities for a minor's distress that worsens with transition. So Varian described how the surgery actually made the condition worse. Shame, she said. I felt shame. She told the jury, it's hard to face that you are disfigured for life.
Such a thing as gender, that's not right. There's variability in personality and temperament. And the idea that, that there's no such thing as biological sex, that's just insane.
It's insanity. They've abstracted gender from sex and then read gender back into sex.
Yeah.
Listen to where this verdict came from, okay? The verdict was delivered in an overwhelmingly Democratic jury in Westchester County, just north of New York City, in a state whose constitution forbids discrimination on basis of gender identity and has been a sanctuary state, offering legal protections for minors who travel from other states to do the process of getting from one sex to another, even though we know that that's sort of a misnomer. It doesn't really happen that way. You can have different parts, but that's not necessarily who you are. It's just who your surgeons tried to make you or created you to be.
You could say with reasonable certainty that 1 in 10 women has a masculine temperament and 1 in 10 men has a feminine temperament. He's more interested in people than things, and he's extremely high in openness. And so his temperament is fluid. He's creative, and so he's one thing one day and one thing the next. And his fundamental temperament is tilted towards the feminine. But that doesn't mean he's not a man.
Reading a little bit from the end of the article, it says one possible reason that the doctors didn't settle in this case is they assumed they'd be safe in a blue state where Letitia James is the DA or the head attorney general in that state. These doctors and psychologists are clearly not as protected as they thought, and it bodes well for detransition lawsuits in other states. Ultimately, the case punctures the assumption that the political climate alone can shield clinicians from scrutiny. How crazy is it that the political climate in these different districts is how these doctors and psychologists are determining their care? That makes it most obvious that this is actually a political argument that has been cast and transposed onto therapy, and that this is in fact, this needs to be worked out in legal circles before it enters into a therapist's office. And as Jordan Peterson says, you cannot make me speak the words, you cannot compel me to perform certain speech in my therapeutic appointments just because of a political ideology that's expedient at its time and place. Now, I believe that if you go through these processes with your therapist and psychologist and potentially surgeons, those surgeons and therapists and psychologists should be held fully accountable for the consequences of these actions. And while it may make some patients feel slightly better about their bodies, I'm not sure. It might do that, but there will be a great many, a high percentage of them that it does not. And when you've gone through all of these consequential interventions, surgeries and therapy appointments and changing the hormones that you're taking, when you do all those things to your body, there is a high likelihood that you will feel out of sorts. And so these psychologists performing these types of interventions to move someone towards a surgery, that would be like someone coming in with anorexia and approving them having a bypass surgery because it would help them lose weight. If it's obviously not what's good for them, and this is an open question, if it's not good for them, you cannot just affirm blindly. It is well past time that we do not just affirm in therapy appointments. I can affirm that one of my clients has a good characteristic, like you are strong in conversation or you are good at detail-oriented work. Those are things I would affirm. But affirming someone's drastic changes, that must be questioned. And this is an important time where this legal case has set precedent against this industry. And I'm so happy that this was awarded to this young person who deserves to have some financial stability as they try to rejigger their life to make it better for themselves after these horrible things that this psychologist and surgeon did to them. I appreciate so much that this is a new day for my industry where I might actually be able to go work at a place and not be compelled to speak a certain way and not to just blindly go into interventions that seem to me to be unscientific. And I am very grateful that the warning that I've been casting upon all of my employers that you are likely and could get sued for doing this seems to have been proven right. And I've been blowing the whistle on this for the past 3 years, and I pray that this new day would march forward and that a great many psychologists who are doing unscientific things would be taken out of the industry. If you can get behind a future of faith, fatherhood, and freedom for America, and yes, even common sense psychology moving forward, I would love your support. Please subscribe. Thanks for watching to the end.